Welcome back to the Betsperts Golf DFS Show here at none other than betspertsgolf.com. As always, I'm your host, John Daigle, joined today by Splits himself, none other than Ron Klos. Ron, how are you doing ahead of a major week?
Yeah, doing well. Volatility and variance are the words of this week. And, I love watching the players because it is the craziest event of the year. And that's why it's also one of the best viewing tournaments because of all the chaos and the risk reward holes that we're going to see. And honestly, everyone has a chance to win here. And so, I haven't really embraced it as much from a DFS perspective because it almost seems like you have to be lucky to have a good week here at Sawgrass. And I typically don't like to play the ownership game. But again, here it's so unpredictable. You just don't know who's going to implode. The 10K guys are just as prone as the 6K guys. So it's going to be a fun week.
And we will certainly get into the details of all of that with everyone soon. But first, we cannot be a trio without our third and someone who will help us along the ownership game as I continue to be off every single week and we have debates. It is none other than the host of the Back Nine Bets podcast, Byron Lindeque, the model maniac himself. Byron, how are you doing ahead of Players Championship?
Oh, doing good. This is a good week for me. I've hit back-to-back winners here at this event over the last 2 years, and it's just a fun event to watch, bet on, view, tilt your face off. The whole full 360 degrees that you can find in golf betting is going to be this week, and it's just the best time ever. So,
and we will definitely get into a lot of strategy with one another. But very quickly, before we dive in, some quick house cleaning because monthly subs at Betsperts Golf are just $19.99. Buy now, and it takes you through the Masters. And drop everything, because this is the important part. I know you're trying to hit fast forward 15 seconds on the podcast app, but just listen closely, because the most important part is that if Jon Rahm or Jordan Spieth win this week, if they win the Players, your sub is free. No catches. It's that simple. So if you believe Rahm or Spieth win, you would be crazy not to dive in, especially for just $19.99, because you could potentially become a member for free. Ron Klos's course preview, which I always begin this show with, is free already on the site. But everything else, because he hides everything from that free article, everything else he offers, all of our DFS content, including projected ownership that we have out on Wednesday night, including Ryan Noonan's betting cards as well, all the rest of that and our tools for these major tournaments and underdog major drafts are behind the paywall for just $19.99. So it's right there for everyone. If you believe Jon Rahm, who was on a tear, wins this week, then of course you can get that sub for free. With that being said, though, as I mentioned, Ron, we are now in Majors week, and I usually go on a spiel about the course overall and how we're going to discuss it, and we will do that. I'm going to kick it to you to do that, but I think it's important to start off by mentioning the volatility of players here. Remember last year as well, Cam Smith, who's now almost a distant memory, like Bryson DeChambeau. We just don't see him at all on TV anymore. But remember last year he won, and he basically won the Third World War. Like on Friday alone, the wind eliminated every player depending on when your tee time was. And so you didn't have a chance even from your very first tee because this course is so brutal and unpredictable. As you noted in your course preview, not only coastal winds were fighting here, not only lightning fast greens, but also 3.5 inch rough in this tournament compared to 2.5 inches in past years. And this course is so full of variance, as we mentioned, that every single hole has at least an 8% birdie or better rate and an 8% bogey rate all over the place. You also sent me some notes, and I think this is what stood out the most to me is that for DFS purposes, last year's winning Millie lineup featured 5 of 6 golfers with single-digit ownership, 2 of 6 with 1% ownership, and 3,000 of salary on DraftKings left on the table. So I think that leads us into throwing everything out that we think we know out the window. And now I want to come to you for some more course preview and DFS notes.
Yeah, so it's a par 72, just under 7,300 yards, designed by Pete Dye, who is known for a lot of deception on his course. This is one that can't be overpowered off the tee. It's definitely better to be in the fairway because, like you mentioned, the rough this week, players are talking about it. It's all over that, it's right now they say it's close to 5 inches. They're supposed to cut it today down to about 3.5. But basically, it's as long as it's ever been here. In years past, it's not been as penal, but it looks like that's going to change this year. You have water hazards and bunkers of all shapes lurking everywhere. Greens are a little smaller in size. We have Poa trivialis this week, not Bermuda. So Bermuda grass is still dormant. But like you said, Daigle, they are lightning fast. And kind of along with the volatility, another reason why handicapping this event is so difficult is because this course just doesn't favor one specific type of player over another. It's strategic target golf, like you're going from point A to point B, almost like chess with a golf ball. And whenever this happens, in my mind, approach play becomes paramount. And it's kind of what I call the separator. So players who can hit the proper quadrant on these greens, which have all kinds of slopes and tiers to them, they can gain on the field in proximity to the hole, which is going to be kind of one of my key things I'm looking at. And those players will be able to separate from the field. And so that's why approach is so important this week. 74% of players who finished in the top 10 here since 2018 have gained at least 2 strokes on approach. But if your ball striking is off, there is kind of one saving grace, and that's if you have an elite short game. And out of the 5 players, there's only been 5 players who finished in the top 10 here since 2018 that lost on approach. Those 5 players gained an average of 9.3 strokes around the green and putting. So kind of the 2 things I'm looking at the most important this week, definitely approach and putting.
Byron, what about yourself in your first look whenever you start reading into this tournament and what we need to chase for DFS lineups?
Yeah, so I've got the world's largest truck stop I-80 hat on. This week it's going to be the world's largest luck stop, and people are going to be shooting 80 and hitting the highway because the volatility, like we said, this Florida swing, it's pivot your face-off season, and I don't think that there's any other scenario that you want to follow here, because if you're going to be chasing chalky lineups, you're going to be sitting on Friday afternoon just wondering what on earth you did with yourself, because there is so many opportunities to just have your round go astray here. And like Laurent said, you have to have control of your golf ball. Ball striking is imperative. Love the good ball strikers here and guys with good course history. Obviously, it's one of the more predictive venues of the season, even though a lot of people miss cuts here. When they do make the cut, they play pretty well. So that's basically the 2 tails that I'll be following. And as always, the lower owned guys will be chasing course history a lot more than anything else, because that's why they price down there anyway. So yeah, it's pretty simple. I'm playing the ownership game hardcore this week again, and hoping to take advantage of that.
Do you have stats like clubbing down, for instance, off the tee? Since you mentioned, Ron, driving accuracy is of the utmost importance to this course. We also know average driving distance the last 4 years is 281.5 yards. So nearly 40 yards cut short of some of the longest drivers on tour. Do you have these stats baked in, and are you using them for everyone in your models behind the scenes when you're building for DFS lineups?
So yeah, so that's part of my model for the week. It's basically what I do is I look at every course that kind of the way I do it is the percentage of drives that players hit over 300 yards for the week. And so here, for example, at Sawgrass, only 23% of drives go over 300 yards. So that's clearly a less than driver course. So I kind of take a pretty deep stat-based approach to it and see, okay, what are these courses that are similar? And so, yeah, you have a group of about maybe 10 to 12, 13 courses that are very similar here, as far as there's very few drivers hit. Now, when we say few drivers, we still have 4 par 5s. Okay, so you're still going to hit driver on some holes. But overall, drivers are hit a lot less here. And so, yeah, and that's kind of what I have a very key piece in my model this week. Looking at certain of these splits that other people aren't looking at. For example, we have a strong field with very tough scoring conditions. So how do golfers play in that type of those type of courses? And then also with water on just about every hole here, looking at other courses that have lots of water, like a PGA National, and kind of comparing it to those courses. So definitely looking at those things. And just really quick, going back to what you were talking about with the winning lineup from last year. So just going back a little bit here. So last year, for example, 4 of the top 11 players in DraftKings pricing missed the cut. When you take it back a year before that, 2021, 6 of the top 11 players missed the cut. And in 2019, actually, let's go back to 2018. This one was really interesting. The top 7 scores in DraftKings points were 7,300 or less. So again, think about that for a second. The top 7 for the whole 2018 tournament. So again, you're going to have to just kind of, for me, for example, my player pool is as big as it's ever been this week. I'm playing 150 lineups, and I usually have a pretty tight pool around maybe 30 to 40 golfers. This week, I'm like around 60. So this is definitely not the week to go all in on one player, in my opinion.
Byron, any thoughts on that? Are you expecting to play the pivot game everywhere? And we'll talk about some of those pivot spots because we're already seeing a handful of golfers below 8K check in as extremely popular.
Yeah, it's going to be tough because I'm a big fan of Keegan Bradley this week, so we'll have to see how I get behind him at all. But that might be the only person I actually just play that's super chalk. But I'm definitely going to be pivoting my face off as always. I do have off the tee strokes gained on courses less than 7,200 yards baked in here. I've also got proximity numbers from 225 to 250 yards into the greens, looking those up so that you can make sure that if someone struggles off the tee, if they're good at hitting a 3-wood into these kind of greens, they'll succeed at this kind of venue because that kind of translates off the tee with clubbing down and hitting 250-yard shots. So those are some areas I'll be looking to get a little frisky with, and hopefully we can find some gems.
Let's then get into it. And as always, I like to start with those who are priced the highest because I think they separate and then basically tell us how to build our lineups, where we're going to go from there. And at the top, there are 4 guys for 5 digits in salary on DraftKings this week. And it is Jon Rahm yet again leading the way at 11.8, Rory McIlroy at 11K, Scottie Scheffler 10.6, seems very valuable, and Xander Schauffele, who obviously had a great week last week at an even 10K. So Ron, where do you start among this tier?
So yeah, and when you guys go here, I'd be interested to get your thoughts on, for example, course history. Because when you look at like these top 3 players, if we're just looking at Rahm, McIlroy, and actually we could go down here a little further, but if we're talking about volatility, the world number 1, Jon Rahm, he's finished 55th or worse in 3 of his 5 trips here. Then you have number 2 and 3, Scheffler and McIlroy have missed a combined 3 cuts in their last 6 starts here, with only 1 finish inside the top 30. And, you look at Xander Schauffele and even go down a little bit further to Patrick Cantlay. Those 2 have missed a combined 6 straight cuts here. So, you're kind of picking and choosing. No, for me, and again, when we get into these stacked fields, I'm pretty much spreading it out this week. I'm playing all these guys. Now, the top 3 I will be underweight on compared to the field. I think for me, it's almost like you're trying to cover your tracks. You want to have a little bit of them because one of them could easily win. But at the same time, I would much prefer starting a lot of lineups down lower. Scheffler would be my top choice up here, though. He's first in my model. He's 3rd in this entire field in ball striking. He's just always hanging around. He never has an off week. Like when he finished 12th at Genesis a couple weeks ago, that was like his off week. So he's just so consistent. Jon Rahm off the tee is a little concerning right now. We saw him kind of pulling a lot of drives to his left, which is big time trouble here if you miss left at Sawgrass. And then Rory, Rory looked good, but again, he's not going to get to use his driver much here, and that's kind of how he gains a lot of his strokes on the field, is just so good driving the ball with the distance he gets off the tee. So, I have some questions if his all-around game will be enough here, but Scheffler would be my guy. And since you mentioned Xander, since he is 10K, he's had 2 down weeks. Genesis, he lost 4 strokes around the green, and we all know how good he is around the greens typically. And then you look last week, Thursday and Friday, he gained 8 strokes ball striking. Like he was at the top of the leaderboard, and then he just fell apart on the weekend. So he's coming in at like 11% right now. You look, Patrick Cantlay just 2 spots below him. He's at 24%, or I guess some places have him a little lower than that. But, I think Xander is the perfect leverage play, and I will be having a lot of Xander this week.
Scheffler, of course, last year did actually suffer the down round from the wind on Friday, but he set himself up with a 2-under opening round. So he went under the cut. He made the cut despite shooting 4 over on that second round. What about for you, Byron, in this range? Where do you start? Is there also a player you are more than willing to fade here?
Yes, I'll jump off the bat here with a Jon Rahm fade. I love fading Jon Rahm, but this week in particular is my favorite. If you take a look at Jon Rahm's wedge proximities, okay, he struggles to control his spin on golf courses that are soft. We're going to see most likely a softer golf course than we've come from Bay Hill, the Genesis, the Farmers. Those are all very tough, firm golf courses. The reason he's sitting outside top 55 all the time is because his wedges are just horrific around here. So I'm definitely fading him at this price in particular. It's unfortunate that his price is there because, you're not going to be fading all that much. I don't see too many people going to him, but I'm okay leaving him out of my lineups. And I love Scotty this week. Just love the ball striking from him. Love the consistency he provides. And he's just of the safer guys up top here. And we go into a place that, you don't necessarily have to be the best putter in the world to succeed. That's been kind of his downfall lately. The putter can come and go. So I love what he can get up to. And then Xander, I'm there with you, Ron. Pivoting, like we're going to get a guy at 12% ownership who's won 3 times last year or whatever. So if anything just pops up for the week, as we've seen, you don't know what to expect here. I think you can take a large brush stroke at this event and pick guys that might not have the best incoming form and just hope for the best. So love Xander this week.
What do you think Scheffler will check out at in ownership, Ron, given that 10-6, $1,200 less than John Rahm seems like a large discrepancy?
Yeah, I've got him at right around 1920 right now. So John Rahm is definitely, for me right now, 16%. So he would be another leverage play. And I just think with his salary, a little bit surprising that he's $800 more than obviously Rory. So that was usually DraftKings, prices these guys lower, especially the top guy. So that's another interesting thing. People trying to save money, trying to squeeze a lot of these 9K guys in. They're not going to play Rahm. So, we may come back to him by the end of the night. And, if he's down to 14, 15%, he might be a really good play.
The tier of 9K players includes a couple golfers that even Noonan listed in his betting card. Max Homa leads them at 9.9. Cantley, you mentioned, already checking in over 20% at 9.7. Morikawa 9.5, who can't make a putt to save his life right now, despite grading well in every other metric we want for this course. JT at 9.4, Finau at 9.2, and Sung JM at 9K. Hats off to you, by the way, Byron, because I guess Sung J well over 20, 25%. And I believe he came in around 10 or 11% in the single entry contest. But overall, Byron, let's start with you. And this tier, a couple of players you're gravitating towards here.
Yeah, I think I'm totally fine going to Max Homa as my first play of the lineup. He's just providing this level of consistency. Last week, he finished T14, having the worst putting stats in the field in the top 40 outside of Emiliano Grillo. So everything about his game just screams baseline floor that's like through the roof almost. Love what he's getting up to. And then I'll take on some Colin Love here. I think he's going to be an interesting play. You're basically taking a gamble on the putter, like you mentioned there. Everything else about his game makes the world of sense. If he survives the wind on Friday, which is in that afternoon wave on Friday, which is no bueno. But maybe people will be pivoting off of him because of that. And if he can just survive it and just get through there, I love what he can get up to on this course. And then I'll just go to Tony Finau as well. Another theoretical perfect fit for this course. Shot, I think, 79 here last year and then 69 or some crazy discrepancy he messed up early in the round. His ball striking right now is going to probably provide him with an opportunity to just be a bit of a safer play at this kind of ownership too. JT is someone I'm not necessarily looking to play that much because last week was the time to play JT, at that kind of ownership. And you could see what he could get up to in that wind. And then he did what he did. He crushed it in that wind. And then all of a sudden, when conditions get nice and breathless and easy to score in, Justin Thomas just fumbles the bag somehow. He does once a tournament, he has that round where he just shoots himself out the event. So he's definitely a showdown candidate for me, but I'm out of him in the week-long stuff for sure.
What about with you, Ron? Because when I look at this tier, Homa also stands out. Slightly worried about his ownership, but even last week, it's not like he had a bad day. His worst round was Sunday, and he shot even. And so in leading this field in strokes gained on approach over the last 3 months, it really seems like he's rounding into form at the perfect time.
Yeah, so week after week, he just continues to impress. It could be California, Florida, the desert, the coast. It doesn't matter anymore. He can play anywhere. And it's very hard to argue that he isn't a top 5 player in the world right now. over his past 36 rounds, he's second to only John Rahm in strokes gained average per round, which is amazing when you think about. So last week, like we kind of said already, his short game left him. He still gains 11.1 strokes ball striking at Bay Hill. So I expect to bounce back, this week. He has not lost with his putter in consecutive weeks in over a year. So I'll feel pretty safe about Homa there. And that's going to be some ownership that I'm very willing to take on. Going back to Byron, though, I do disagree about JT. He's one of the very few players that I can actually trust here, not only to make the cut, but also to finish high on the leaderboard. Obviously he's had great success here winning this 2 years ago. He's never missed a cut here. One of the best iron players in the world. And when you combine that with his elite around the green game, I think that's the exact combination we're looking for this week. So well-rounded, and kind of what Byron said, we do have some wind creeping into the forecast this week. It looks like it's going to be pretty gusty on Friday afternoon, going into Saturday. So yeah, one of the best wind players in this field for sure. He also finished first in my model in past performance on other less than driver courses, and also on courses that have high water danger. So I know he's had his consistency issues, but I think he fits this course better than anyone, and I'm willing to go back to him this week. And my last guy here, I do agree with Byron on Tony Finau. I think he's another great fit just because, again, we're looking for players who have an all-around game. He's top 10 in this field in tee to green, and he does have the putting ability to get hot with the flat stick. So, I just think with his course history, people are going to shy away from him, and you can kind of see that in the ownership, kind of right around 12%, 13% right now. So I'm definitely willing to go to Finau at 9,200 for sure.
Any player that you are having a hard fade on in this range, since I think a lot of lineups will be built around here?
Yeah, I am pretty much for sure. I don't know if I'll completely fade him, but Colin Morikawa is just someone who, 81st around the green, 119th putting, especially on this. I did look at kind of the Pro Trivialis. There's 6 courses on tour which use this specific putting surface, and so those numbers did not improve much for him on that as well. So he's just a guy, even with his ball striking, I just can't with that short game do it.
Totally fair given his short game performance of late. As we slip into the 8Ks, and Byron, I'll allow you to start again. I think we're going to see lineups being built with Hovland at 8-9 at the top, Willie Z 8-8, Jordan Spieth 8-7, and then from that point forward, we have Matthew Fitzpatrick, who did play well last week, Cam Young checking in the mids at 8-5, Tyrrell Hatton, of course, a win player at 8-3, another win player in Shane Lowry at 8-2, so, and then, of course, Jason Day at 8K, who's playing really well of late. So, overall, where do you start here, Byron?
Yeah, this is a range that's looking like you're not really going to get much opportunity to get real different. I think maybe Jordan Spieth provides you with the best opportunity to do that, but he's also one of the guys that if you look at these 5 guys here, he's so inconsistent, man. You just never know what you're going to get with him. And he was fortunately in one of my lineups last week at like 4.5% owned, which is the perfect time to go to him. But, if he's going to be pushing mid-teens, it's a different situation that you're looking at there. But I don't know. I might even just land up skipping the majority of this range. I don't really favor too many people in this area. I don't like Cameron Young's short game around you. I don't like Matthew Fitzpatrick's proximity numbers. I don't like Jordan Spieth's consistency. Will Zalatoris and Victor Hovland are the 2 guys I do like, but they're going to be popular. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with this AK range. I'm most likely not going to be that heavily invested in this range, though, if that answers your question.
Spieth, of course, led the field last week at the Arnold Palmer Invitational in strokes gained around the green. Ron, what about you in the 8K range here?
Yeah, so we'll get to one of my favorite plays in a second, but Will Zalatoris, I think I'm coming back to him. He ranks out as the 4th best ball striker in this field. And again, he's another guy who, when we look at these challenging greens at Sawgrass, I think this is a chance for him to separate from the field. And unlike Morikawa, Zalatoris, we've all seen his struggles on camera with his short putting, but he's actually one of the best long lag putters in the field. He has one of the lowest 3-putt rates on tour. And so, at a course like this where the greens are so challenging, I think they're the 4th toughest to gain strokes on the entire tour. Putting especially with the 3-putt rate is, I think it's like 3.9%, one of the highest on tour as well. So I just think that combined with his past experiences here, he's finished 21st, 26th, so he's kind of got that course experience down. And so I do like him. Shane Lowry, again, like you said, wins picking up. He's a guy who, 8,200. I think that's really good value for him. A little bit off last week, finishing 67th, but, before then, he was 14th at the Genesis, 5th at the Honda. Of course, the Honda, another course full of water. So, I really like his accuracy off the tee. New caddy, so he's kind of, I think, probably getting into a better rhythm in that area as well. And so, say what?
Lowry's got a new caddy?
Yeah, he's had a new caddy for a few weeks now. So, okay. Yep. And so, yeah, I mean, and he's one of the few players, if you look, I think he's the only player actually who's finished in the top 15 here the past 2 years. He was 13th last year and he was 8th the year before. So, of course, he had that memorable hole-in-one on hole 17. Mm-hmm. So, he's a guy who I love. And then and Jason Day, everybody's going to be playing Jason Day this week. He doesn't have a win to show for it, but when you look at his past 36 rounds, he's only behind 3 players, the big 3, McIlroy, Scheffler, and Rahm in strokes gained per round. So he's in excellent form, 4 consecutive top 10s. He leads the field in bogey avoidance, which is another stat that I have very ranked high in my model this week. And so, the big thing for me, though, is his putting has improved dramatically. That's kind of plagued him the past couple of years. But if you look since the start of this calendar year, he's gaining 1.33 strokes per round putting, which is just an amazing turnaround for him. So, I just think with his past history here, I think just he checks all the boxes. And, when we look at ownership, it's definitely, I have him anywhere between 20 and 24%. But he's a guy that I'm willing to play maybe 30% and then obviously get different in the other parts of my lineup.
He is also someone I put a 70-1 ticket down on for Masters about a month back because it was clear that he is no longer injured and in top form. So hoping that cashes as well. This is typically the time, Byron, when I tee you up for Tom Kim and you didn't go there. I really thought you'd jump on him at 8,100. Given that, like in the last 20 rounds, he is top 20 in this field even in strokes gained on approach and driving accuracy. So if you're talking about someone to, as we discussed at the beginning of the show, pivot off of these high roster golfers, and Jason Day and Keith Mitchell are the first 2 that come to my mind. Mm-hmm. I do personally think Tom Kim is a really good pivot play here.
Yes. No, I'm with you. I just kind of focus on the top of that 8K range. I never really got anywhere. I like Shane Lowry, love Tom Kim, and then a little bit of Chris Kirk love in the top of the 8, the 7 there. So love that little section of the board. Tom Kim, he's a perfect course fit. Like I've had a future on this guy since last year. So it's like go time for him here. Top 40 bet at like minus 115. Love that for Tom Kim. The consistency has been really solid on these longer courses even. So now we get to a place where I don't think the putter has been his biggest problem, John. And it's probably because he feels like he has to make a lot of putts because he's not gaining off the tee. Now he can come to this venue and like the rest of his game is going to lift him up. So it's a whole psychological thing with Tom that I'm playing that angle too, but love his game here. Let's go. It's go time.
I want to leak into the 7Ks here and your thoughts on Chris Kirk, Ron, just to start, given how well he's played in the last 2 tournaments. I don't know if like box score hunters or recency bias will affect his ownership overall, but it's clear that Kirk is playing at top form. Is there anything that suggests it doesn't matter for this tournament?
I don't think so. He's had pretty good performances here in the past. His ball striking has just been so on point the last couple of weeks. I think he's got a lot of momentum right now, and I think you should ride that momentum coming into this week. Even looking as far as, he plays really well. He's top 20 in this field on, courses with high water danger. So I just think he's a safe play. I don't know if he's necessarily in this type of field going to rise to the top again. But I think he's definitely a good play here. I think Siwoo Kim, who, oftentimes he's kind of the ultimate boomer bust play, but his consistency, a lot of people don't realize just how consistent he's been. Even with the missed cut at Genesis a couple weeks ago, like before then, he hadn't missed a cut since July. And so I think his consistency combined with how good he plays these Pete Dye courses, he's won the Players and he, won at Sedgefield, which is another course. So, I just think Siwoo Kim at 7,600 is a really good value. He's a good ball striker, and I think he just fits really well this week. And again, I think, are we ready for the King and Bradley discussion, Byron?
Yeah,
let's do it.
So yeah, I mean, Keegan, I think it was right after his round on Sunday where he was interviewed, and it could have been Monday, I can't remember, but he flat out said this is the best he's ever felt. People forget, he's a major champion. He's won FedEx Cup playoff. He's a WGC winner. Coming off another strong performance last week at the Arnold Palmer, he gained 6.6 ball striking. So 7,500. I just think, again, course history. Now, again, it's a debate. For me, course history doesn't matter as much this week just because of how volatile it is. But, 5th, 29th, 16th, 7th, those are his last 4 starts here. So Keegan is a guy that I will come back to. And again, this 7K range is just loaded. I mean, you could literally play 5 guys here, and I think you'd be fine. But those are my 2 favorite at the top of this range.
Byron, your turn to sound off on the 7K range.
Yeah, I think the interview was at the Players there at the venue, and he said, the only club I had a problem with in my bag was a 3-iron, and I don't have that problem anymore. So now his whole bag is fine, which I don't know how you can have a problem with just a 3-iron, but hey, he's Keegan Bradley. I'm sure that's a very normal thing for him. I love him, this week. Got an outright on him. I think I'm okay taking him as that free square this week, essentially over Jason Day. I'll go to Keegan, cheaper price and probably a little bit less ownership. Pretty much the same product for me. Love Justin Rose and Billy Horschel. These are going to be 2 guys that are going to be very intriguing plays. They 2-3% own both of them. Got reasonable course history. Yeah, nothing spectacular. But again, if we're looking for those 2-3% ownership guys that we mentioned in that Millie Maker lineup, these are kind of guys that you want to be playing. Another person I'm really interested this week is a bit of Tommy Fleetwood. He's got some incredible course history, especially from an elite short game perspective. He can chip in from about anywhere. And then a little bit of Tom Hoagie action as well. I think I'm all about the Toms this week. Might just put a whole lineup full of Thomases and go with Tom Hoagie. I think he's one of the best ball strikers, approach players in the field that's priced at $7,400. And when you're looking at his deficiency in his game, it's around the green. And if you're looking for an upside from a golfer who's got iron play like he does, the more greens you hit, the less you have to chip. And that's his worst area of his game. And the hitting the greens is the best part of his game. So if things go right for him, the upside there is unlimited. And I actually have an outright on Tom Hoagie at 130-1. So let's go. Love him there. Russell Henley's another guy in the middle of the 7K range I'm a big fan of, with Seamus Power right above him there too, especially after Seamus shot 10 over par at Bay Hill last week. Hopefully some people get real scar tissue from that. I'm not a fan of bouncing off that guy. Always love what he's up to at this venue. And then, yeah, we can talk about some other 7K guys a little bit later if we want. But those are the top of the board guys.
My heart still has shards all over the floor from Tom Hoagie's 16, 17, 18th hole on Friday last week as I flag planted him. And that reason was the only reason he came in 2 over and thus missed the cut by a stroke. Still frustrating. Around Tom Hoagie, though, like flag planting him last week, I do want to flag plant Brian Harman this week. Given 9th on tour in driving accuracy, 13th on tour in proximity to the hole from the rough. And as we mentioned earlier, it seems like rough will play a larger factor than usual this week, given the inch raise for this tournament in particular. And we've also seen his putter get hot in big events like majors. So I definitely want to be overweight on Harman this week. And also, Byron, you slipped into my DMs on Saturday and you mentioned, let's have the 2v2 talk on the show. So what did you want to discuss as overarching strategy for what we were talking about? Yeah,
it's something that I don't typically employ when I build a lineup. And you mentioned that you had your eye on 2 different players that you want to put together as a combo. Why is that? What's the benefit of that?
It really just comes down to, when I say 2v2, I have 3 to 4 core plays when I build lineups, and then I will sprinkle in the other players around them. Also note that I am a 3-max and single entry guy. So I hand build lineups, whereas a lot of people are shooting out CSVs and plugging them into DraftKings. So we all build differently, but my hand building, I do have my core group of players. The 2v2 didn't matter because I had Matt Kuchar as one of my core plays. So it just ultimately blew up in my face. But last week, as I mentioned to you, I had a 2v2 for single entries of Ben Griffin and Tyrrell Hatton versus Aaron Wise and who else was it that I told you? And
Was it
Tom
Hoagie?
Hoagie, yes.
Yeah.
And I, of course, you could already know because I'm frustrated which side I went with. And Aaron Wise, that first day alone just blows up in your face. And you get him at 5%. At the end of day one, Ron, actually in the $200 single entry tournament, you and I had the same score somehow because we both played Aaron Wise as well. And it just was terrible. But overall, that was my 2v2. And I think in single entries, like you start with your core already, but trying to figure out the correct build around that core is really when it comes into play. And for me, I just couldn't be on Ben Griffin's ownership when in the end it didn't matter because Ben Griffin had an amazing tournament. So I played it wrong, but usually that's the situations I face whenever I have single entries and 3 maxes.
Okay, cool. That's interesting because I think it applies to the contest that you're entering into. I think you're not going to be doing like that in 20 maxes and 150 max contests.
Like when Ron mentions at the top of the show having 60 players in his pool, obviously that's not like a single entry pool, right? Because my decision for single entry is to boil down every single decision everyone's going to make in the field and then say, okay, like you can only play 6 guys. Everyone can only play 6 guys in a single entry. So how am I going to handle this ownership wise? Which honestly just leads for a lot of leveraging. In single entries, you just leverage off of basically everything and cross your fingers. So
awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for that info. Yeah, that's
it's a
really
different discussion.
Yeah.
It's definitely a different discussion for DFS. I think the great Matt Wiley, who we'll definitely have on the show again soon, could say it and could talk about it a lot more in depth than me. So we'll definitely book him again soon. Ron, though,
let me say this real quick related to that. Because I think what you said is a great idea, and I even think I have become more of a multi-entry guy over the years here, and I mean personally I hand build 100 lineups, so I guess that makes me different. But I like to put my touch on it. So, but yeah, I think when you say picking a core group of 3 or 4 guys, I think you can do that for multi-entry too, because if you want to get maybe this is not the week for that, but typically when I have a good feeling on a course and what's going to happen, even when you go 4 guys, and that's where that 2v2 comes in, because you have your core and you're just kind of mixing and matching everywhere else. And I think that's a great strategy. So, yep. I
don't stake shame. I think DFS, especially golf, given how volatile it is, and there's not really like one clear winner every single week. RotoGrinders, of course, has the DFS player world ranking, so you can go look there. But I do think it's extremely volatile. So, Ron, let's just say, I don't know, someone's playing $100 in the Millie Maker this week. So he has 5, or she has 5 lineups, $20 a piece. In that case, then what would you say is like overweight for hand building? Having the same golfer in what, 3 to 5 lineups, 4 or 5 lineups?
Yeah, if I'm doing single entry, I'm probably getting a much tighter pool for sure. And what I like to do with my single entry and 3 max especially, and even if you want to get into 20 max is,
I think is the best way to talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when I will definitely build a core of 3 or 4 guys, and I will just mix and match. Like definitely they're going to be 3 guys I'm confident in, and they might even be 3 guys who are chalky, but then you try to mix and match around them, and you try to pick kind of maybe outliers or guys for me that are high in my model that are not highly owned. And so I definitely, if you're doing it like that, you have a much smaller entry fee overall. I'm definitely getting more focused on a certain specific group of players.
Moving on to the 6K range, though, and Ron, I'll let you lead off this because you were the one who began infiltrating our minds and saying, just look at history here, like players who can actually win in the low or make the cut in the lower 7K range and just throw out their recent performance, since we're all dumpster diving here. And models, at least right now, I believe the ones popping are Ryan Fox and John Suh, but I will let you tell me who you're looking at in the 6K range.
Yeah, and let me really quick, just that kind of that bottom of the 7K. I mean, we're going like I think Keith Mitchell is another guy we haven't mentioned yet. Kind of one of the most accurate drivers. I think he's proven that he can go toe to toe with the best players in the world, and so I think he's really interesting this week. And like you, I'm on Hoagie. I think Hoagie, whatever model I try to run, he's top 5 iron player in the world. I think you almost have to play Hoagie this week because of what this course demands. I agree on Russell Henley, and even going down, my 2 favorite plays before I get to the 6K. I do like Ben Griffin. I don't think his consistency is pretty amazing at this point. And then Thomas Dietrich is another guy who I keep coming back to every single week. And other than when he withdrew a couple weeks ago, He just continues to make cut after cut. I think he's missed only one cut in his last 16 events. So those two guys really piqued my interest, and I will be overweight on them. Yeah, 6K this week. It's really interesting. You have a lot of veterans. You have a lot of younger players. I do think Ryan Fox is a guy who, since you brought him up, he is someone I had highlighted. 3% right now coming in. A lot of people really don't know about him because he's been on the DP World Tour. But this is a guy who's played in like 14 majors. So he's used to these high pressure events. Hasn't played Sawgrass. But again, he's a guy who I think you can trust just because of his pedigree a lot more than other guys around here. So he's someone that stands out to me. Taylor Moore at 6,900. His approach game can be shaky at times, but I think he's another young player who's kind of just seemingly there every single week. He may not finish top 20, but top 30, top 40, which is all you need from down here. Of course, you have Kurt Kitayama. See if he can, at that 6,900 price tag. Obviously, that was priced before he won on Sunday when these numbers came out. But I think, again, he's a guy who can kind of, fits the course. The driver is his downfall. He kind of gets wild off the tee. Well, guess what? Everybody's clubbing down here. So I think that's really to his advantage again. And I would say those three are kind of the top three. And you can get in Adam Svensson. He's been pretty good of late. Justin So, like you said, is another guy that you can definitely go to with some success down here.
Russell Knox also on my list, just if you're playing the accuracy off the tee game and then crossing your fingers for really the rest of his performance. What about you, Byron, in the dumpster diving range?
Yes, dumpster diving. I'm going to be sprinkling banana peels all over my lineups, boys. So we got Nick Taylor at 7K flat. If you go take a peek at his recent performances, super consistent. Brendan Todd, talk about a guy. Short game, popper off the tee, accuracy, super tight. And then, like, if you're looking at Pebble, that's the kind of performance you want from a guy here. Hayden Buckley, another guy, very accurate driver of the golf ball, almost elite. He's like top 10 in the world off the tee. The guy's phenomenal. Johnny Vegas, Joel Damon, and Emiliano Grillo, all at $6,800. I love their course histories here. I love what Grillo's been getting up to with the ball striking. And then Joel Damon's just one of those guys. Accurate off the tee, good ball striker, bad short game. That's okay. He played well here last year. Kevin Kisner, another guy, $6,800. He's one of these dudes that doesn't have the ball striking, but elite short game when he's feeling it. And he's popped up here at this venue quite a lot. He's 32nd in my model for course history, which I love to see. And then a few other guys down the board. Sam Ryder, he was just leading the Farmers Insurance for like 3.5 rounds just a few weeks ago. Now he's $6,300 and 1% owned. What's going on there? His recent performances have been fantastic. He's a really good putter, really good with the irons. Nate Lashley's another guy on these shorter positional tracks that I'm a big fan of. And then an absolute dart throw from just a course history perspective, Doug Gim, T29 and I think T6 here in his 2 appearances, which he's $6,100, 2% owned. $6,100 for a guy that's had top 20s and one of them being a top 6 is incredible course history. So I love Doug Gim at this kind of a course.
With that being said, Ron, your 2, let's dwindle it down to 2 favorite golfers that you'll be overweight on.
Justin Thomas for sure up top. Like I said, I think he fits the course perfectly. And then if I'm going down lower, trying to find someone a little lower owned here. I think Keith Mitchell's ownership is not super high yet, so he would be my guy at 7,400.
Really? Okay. I guess I'm guessing that wrong, and I'm open to that again, given that in the 7K range is where I've personally been struggling to pinpoint ownership. So if Keith Mitchell you think is going to come in like 10 to 15%, that's probably honestly too low.
Yeah, he's at right around 13, 14 right now.
I think that's too low. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Byron, what about you?
Max Homer, I'm going to be playing a lot of him. I missed him in the outright market, so I'm going to be loading up on him. And then Nick Taylor. I'm just banking on that upside, man. He was almost won the Waste Management's Phoenix Open. So I don't understand how he was so close to doing that. So I think he's going to do well this week.
I personally would like to go to war with Scotty Scheffler and Brian Harmon in every single lineup. We'll start sprinkling in, though, a lot of other players we mentioned around them. And then right now, your favorite bet on the week, Ron.
Oh, favorite bets.
Amidst a lot of them, I understand, but the rest of them, everyone can find, of course, in your article on the site.
I mean, I would say one of them for sure is a few weeks ago, me and Noonan, we got on Max Homa at 46-1. So obviously his good play has continued. So that looks like a really good number right now. Just going down further here, looking at a finish position bet, I think Keegan Bradley, top 30 at FanDuel for plus 125. Keith Mitchell, same price. I think both of those guys, obviously, can't predict anything at this course, but I'm feeling somewhat confident both of those guys can finish top 30.
Byron, what about your favorite bets?
It's a Tom Kim top 40 bet for me, or a top 30 bet, whichever you feel comfortable going with. Love that going on there. Chris Kirk at plus 120 for a top 40 as well. Just seems like a super, like Ron said, he's so safe. You know, he doesn't have that elite upside, but man, oh man, around these watery graveyard courses, he's so consistent. So love him at plus money there for a top 40.
I will be on Ryan Fox to make the cut. I believe on DraftKings Sportsbook, you can still get it for plus money. Shop it for sure, because there are some plus monies out there still waiting. Whereas like PointsBet, for instance, I believe has the largest line at minus 115. And for all the reasons Ron mentioned about Fox in general in majors, also the fact that like he pops in my model as a terrific salary saver as well. I'm pretty much on him to play into the weekend. Any other parting words here, Ron, before we get out of here?
No, look forward to it. One guy I did say just really quick, I forgot, 6,900. Brendan Todd finished. He was actually the highest. He was actually the highest 6K guy on my model. He finished 28th. So Brendan Todd's another guy who kind of fits this course. shorter hitter. But yeah, we've got. Keep watching the weather. It does look like the winds are creeping up Friday afternoon. So the chatter has already started about the Friday, or I should say PM AM being the favorable wave here. So it always changes down there along the coast. So just keep watching the weather, and there might be some good live bets you can add as well based on those weather conditions as we get closer here once they tee off.
Byron, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, I forgot to mention one bet that it's an absolute degenerate bet, but hole-in-one on hole 17, I think FanDuel's got it boosted to like plus 320. It's a complete degenerate bet, but every time someone hits a shot on there, you've got a bit of a mini sweat, right? So like multiple mini microdosing sweats going on. I love that kind of stuff. It's like not looking to make any money, just keeps you entertained. So I love that. Go grab me at the Model Maniac on Twitter. Go see all the fun graphics I've got out there. They're all on like LSD type vibes. It's a fun week to be in the betting world. So yeah, that's it for me.
$19.99 a month through the Masters for everything we talked about and significantly more. And more importantly, again, if Rahm or Spieth win this week, your sub then becomes free. So join everything we're doing in the Discord. Everything Ron mentioned and a lot more is available in the Discord and on the articles at the site at betspertsgolf.com. Until then, be a little bit kinder than what's required. Good luck this week.